Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Welcome, J.M.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for having me here.
Of course, yes. Today we have author J.M. Shaw. She's a dark fantasy author, writes young/new adult action, adventure, fantasy, magic. I looked at the description and I'm dying to jump in. The book, you're re-releasing the first book, The Ascension, and it is a Callum Walker series, correct?
It's the first book, yeah, the first book in the Callum Walker series.
Okay, jump in, tell me everything. I already bought it. Like I seriously just clicked on it because I need to read it.
Yes.
So
Did you buy the one with the fancy new cover?
I did. I bought the one with the fancy new cover.
Yeah. So yeah, the links are it's available online. My series arc begins with the Ascension, and there's our world, our time, coexisting magical realm, but there's a veil that separates us. We can't see across this veil. We don't have magic, but these creatures that do can and have, and they've been the source of our fairy tales and mythologies and monster stories and what have you. And then Callum Walker is my protagonist. He's a young man born with the ability to use magic. He doesn't know why. He's trying to make the most of it. He's able to cross this veil because he has magic, or rather, he's actually dragged across the veil the first time. But he becomes embroiled in this magical realm. He's learning about this world and all the beings therein. Adventures ensue, and we follow him through the series as he's trying to figure out who he is, where he belongs, because he's too magic for here, too human for there, and then try to master his abilities to survive.
Ooh, yes. So you had me at like a magical world, magical abilities, and I saw something about a prophecy maybe in the blurb.
Yeah, so we learn a little bit in the first book that that he is mentioned, or rather, it's alluded that it's him, and it turns out, he's part of this prophecy. There's this war that's going on between, from the human side, there's two brothers that are basically vying for domination, over the magical realm. Well, one of them wants power over the magical realm, the other one just wants power. And Colin kind of gets caught in the middle of him because this prophecy that kind of refers to him, and they both believe he's part of it, says that he will bring an end to the war. Doesn't say how. So they don't want him to bring an end to it. They want to win. So each one of them is after him. So then, he's caught in the middle between these two warring parties, as well as all the beings in the magical realm that are either trying to help him or turn him into one side or the other for amnesty.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, does he have anybody backing him that's on his side here?
Yeah. He has trust issues to begin with because he's that lived kind of like in the shadows, he doesn't really humans we're not really that accepting of people with unique gifts. So he's a little bit reserved and kind of kept to the shadows and didn't really share any of his secrets. And now, so he has some trust issues to begin with. And then, he meets people who he thinks are going to help, and then they turn out they're not. And then he meets people who turn out he thinks they're not going to help him, and then they turn out trying to help him. And so he really doesn't know who to trust.
Well, I'm getting very like Brandon Sanderson vibes here, like
I love
epic.
Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah. I first met Brandon Sanderson when I was reading with my like then like fifth grader, and now like we're both hooked on the
I
books.
know. I just recently discovered Brandon Sanderson this summer. Somebody recommended me. So I bought I'm like heavy into the Stormlight series. And I mean, if you know those books, they're like that thick. So it takes you a hot minute to get through them, but I'm reading them and I'm just like, wow, this is good. I love these books. I love these stories. I love the world building and stuff. But I didn't discover Brandon Sanderson until like this past summer. So I got a lot of reading to do.
You got to catch up. So where did this idea for Callum's story come from?
I was watching a show on Netflix. Like I've always been kind of a big wild imagination and thinking like, what if this, what if that kind of thing, and it kind of sparks my imagination. But I was watching a Netflix series called Merlin, and I started to think, it's like, what if we had a young Merlin before became Merlin the magician? He had to start somewhere. What if he was like a just a typical guy? How would he deal with his powers? And then, I've always been a fan of like the unlikely hero, good versus evil, rising above these overwhelming odds. And so the superhero movies, basically, that's magic is just superpowers. And I love those. So that's the concept.
That's really neat. How did you decide to make his brothers sort of like the antagonist in the book?
Oh, so the two antagonists, I just thought, like sibling rivalry is a big thing, right? And I hadn't intended to make them related, but they had to be related somehow, not necessarily related by blood, but it just worked out that way. So yeah, there's the one that was born, and there's this rivalry between them. So the one brother, and they're both human. The one brother was born with the power of magic, just like Callum. And he goes into necromancy. So he starts conjuring living beings, which is like forbidden magic. And he is seeking power. He's power hungry. His brother was not born with the natural abilities to use magic. He's learned to steal magic and use it. And so he steals magic from these magical creatures that cross our veil, or, it starts out with that. And then he's able to eventually go across the veil. He trains people to work with him and to learn to cast magic, was through these, stored stones that store magic inside. So because humans cannot cast magic, we're not born with it. It's a rarity. And I just thought, what if they were brothers? That kind of came about when I started creating them. It's like, what if they were brothers? It would make more sense for this rivalry, right?
Right, two opposing forces there.
Yeah.
So are they, but I read it as they're Callum's brothers too, but they're not Callum's brothers. They're just brothers with each other.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
brothers with each other. Yeah, they're
I read
um
that a little wrong, but and so that makes sense too. So
yeah,
it's
no,
just,
Callum has no family. He doesn't know where he came from. He grew up in foster care. The typical like unlikely hero kind of thing. But I mean, as the series goes on, he tends to kind of amass some friends here and there. He's very picky about who his friends are, and who he's willing to trust. And then he masses these friends and kind of builds his own little community of family friends, found family kind of thing as we go through the series.
oh, fine. So what kind of beings are across this magical veil? What type of beings are these major characters that help Callum along the way?
Yeah, so we have obviously, well, there's some that help and some that don't help. The dwarves didn't really help him that much. They were trying to save their families and such, and they were in a bad situation. But they were going to turn him into the necromancer, so the necromancer could off him. And then anyway, Callum is meets elves, and he thinks they're going to help him, but they're just using him because and it's some of them are, some of them aren't. I don't want to give too much away, but there's also fairies. I've got later on in the series we will meet some of the deities of lore. There's the Furies, the goddesses of vengeance and retribution. We see the harpies in the second book, and they make an appearance in the third. We learn about demigods. There's dryads. In the fairies, it's interesting because they have different types of fairies. It's like you would have, I hate to compare it to dogs, but however many species of dogs there are. And there's this lore that a lot of the beings in the magical realm evolved from fairies. But then, later on, we'll also see that there's different, different bands of elves and that have separated as well. And we see them more in the fourth book.
That's very cool. I have done a lot of research on fairies because I write about fairies. And yeah, I don't know if you've read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, which is very cool, by the way. But in her book, like all the magical creatures are called fairies, and then they just
Mhm.
have different kinds of fairies. But yes, so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's so fun that you have all those different magical beings. I love worlds like that.
Yeah, and I've kind of given them their own religion, their own culture, their own political system, their own beliefs. Although they have this prophecy and it's shared amongst the different beings within the realm, it's slightly different wording and such. And Whereas, the elves are we see the elves a lot more in the beginning, but then we start to see, the dwarves a little bit more, and they're kind of like, yeah, we'll keep to ourselves unless it bothers us. The elves are, kind of going out there and claiming territory and trying to help everybody. They're like, the goody two shoes of the magical realm. The fairies, they want to help, they want to be altruistic, they do not like war, and they've got this, kind of they're not happy with the elves because the elves did something and they're not happy about them, but they're kind of Switzerland, if you think about them. They want to keep the peace. And then situations happen throughout the series where they cannot. Everybody has to work together.
Interesting. So it's a 4 or 5 book series at this point.
There's more coming. I'm working on my
Okay.
fifth. I've plotted
Okay.
for my sixth.
That was going to be
Hopefully,
my question. There's 4 books now, but you're working on the fifth and it's going to keep going, right?
yes, yeah. And I'm aiming for between six and nine. I keep coming with ideas though, so eventually I'm gonna have to stop and like because I want to write other things. Like I've got this side project that I'm working on. It's like, it's a dystopian Robin Hood meets Romeo and Juliet with hints of Hunger Games. I still won't write spicy romance. That's just my thing. I just have no interest in writing it. History, nonfiction, and spicy romance are kind of like, nah, no, it's not my thing. I don't mind reading a little bit of it, but yeah. I also have this idea. I want to branch into like sci-fi and I want to do a little bit of horror and other genres. I mean, as long as there's action adventure, I'm all for it.
That sounds so fun. So all your books are clean, it sounds like. And
I
there's
try.
maybe like subplots of love stories, but love stories are never like the main plot in these.
Yeah, I mean, it's more emotional love than physical love. I mean, it's kind of like, and I've seen other authors do this, and I like this idea, something's going to happen in the bedroom, but you can just fade to black. You don't need
Fade
to
to
see
black.
that. That's gonna
Yeah.
confuse the whole generation of young people, so they don't need to see that.
Well, it's good. It's good for parents to know like how clean your books are.
Yes.
I didn't really write and read clean books, so I appreciate that. And it's so fun that you want to write in all these different genres. I'm kind of a genre hopper myself, so it's always good to meet another one.
Yeah, and fantasy is so liberating and it's like you can bring in elements from pretty much every genre into your novels. I did do a lot of like mythology research and stuff, just kind of looking at there's an endless Google search of like mythical monsters. So it was a little scary. I was like, some of my searches, I'm like, I hope that the FBI or whatever is not like looking through my Google search. I'm an author. I'm not a
Yeah.
terrorist or a gothic, like into some dark arts or something.
A little asterisk beside your Google search.
Yeah, exactly. Please don't look,
Yeah, and I did hear you mention a harpy, which I've researched before, but for our listeners, tell us what kind of being that is.
a harpy. Is I believe it's either Greek or somewhere around there. It's like a being from mythology that the beautiful face of a woman, and sometimes they have the body of a woman, but they have feathers and they wings, and they are vicious things. They are just there to just cause pain and torment. And I mean, in some regards, I do try to stick to the mythologies. There are some situations where I do have to take some creative license because mythologies don't necessarily tell you what their religious backgrounds are or their cultural traditional backgrounds are. So I do have to take some, creative license there.
Well, yeah, I mean, every author wants to give their own spin on these beings and creatures and their backstories and their motivations and
Yeah.
all those types of things. So I feel like that's always fun. Believe me, I did not research fairies before I wrote them, and I was like, ooh,
Yeah.
is this bad?
I know. And
So
I mean, like, as a society, and we have all these stories and all these movies and TV shows and stuff. So we have this generalized idea of what all these mythical beings and fairy tale beings are like. But I wanted to go back to the grassroots and build them up from there. And for the most part, I did. That's why there is some similarities because a lot of people have built them from, based on the grassroots and stuff, but they've elaborated. And I think that that's just necessary because, you can't really, there's only so much you can research on fairies because they're really not real. So, pick up
Are
some
you
of it.
sure? I don't
Yeah.
know. I could
I
be a
haven't
fairy.
I haven't found one yet, but if I do, then I'll probably change my mind. I'm
Oh,
open to
yeah, just let me know if you find one.
yeah, I'm open-minded.
So you're writing the fifth book, right? That's what you said. Do we have a
Yep.
title? Do we know what's happening in that book yet, or can you tell us?
Yes. I don't have a title, but I do know that it continues on the story. It starts about a few months after the fourth book, and we're continuing on, and there's this impending invasion of this Northern Kingdom, which is the prime territory within the magical realm where the fairies occupy, sorry, where the elves occupy, and the fairies kind of live in a corner of it, and the dwarves border it, and the centaurs in the north. And but it's not a battle of territory as we learn from, with the fourth book. It's actually the Dugarin, who we find in the fourth book, are invading to take no captives. They want to steal your souls.
Ooh,
And, so they're not gaining power, they're not looking for power or territory or wealth. They're sacrificing souls, they're stealing souls and building this minion army basically because in my series, if you have no soul, you may still be conscious, you're still conscious, you're still intelligent, you're still aware of what's going on, but you have no willpower.
oh,
You have no way to make decisions. You become just an, sort of like a zombie, but not really. You
like
have an
a
intelligence.
Clone War type thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. You realize what's going on, but you may have some, lasting conscience kind of thing, but you have no ability to control things. You're basically just a slave to whatever master decides to own you. And you don't die. You live for until your body basically rots. And then you live as dust until eternity. So it's a very horrible, you know, it would be very horrible existence because there would be no end. It's kind of depressing and sad if you think about it. But so this is escalating into the fourth or into the fifth novel. And Callum is also trying to come to terms, like he fell in love in the fourth book. And either you have a ghost or somebody just opened your back door there.
Yeah, it was my dog. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's okay. I was just thinking that was kind of funny. So we're just continuing on with the series, and he's coming to terms with what it means to be married, and he's fallen in love. Oh, yeah, sorry, spoiler alert. He falls in
That's
love in the
exciting.
fourth book, and I start my fifth book with a wedding. Um,
Aw,
yeah, but then there's also this discovery that's being made on a side timeline that's going along at the same time here. There's something happening at the side, where the dwarves, being industrious miners, they unearthed something that was never meant to be unearthed, and it's something that plays into later stories.
fun. Well, okay, so I have to say, where do you keep all this information? Like, do you have maps? Do you have Excel files? How do you keep all
Oh,
of this?
I should probably write it all down, but I don't ever have a problem with really remembering how everything fits together. But I just keep it in my head. I know every single character. I know their background. I know their motivations. I know where they're headed. I mean, I was writing a chapter in one of my books and it was a character I really like. And then I started had to stop and go, oh my gosh, this character who I love, they have to die. Eventually, they have to die. There's no way not to. So I know where they're going. I know where the series is going to end. I just have to get there. I just don't have
Yeah,
my
it
book.
seems like you're taking a lot of ups and downs to get there. Like I was very concise. Like I did so many bad things to my characters, I had to stop. And
Oh,
like
I
it was
know.
physically hurting me. So I was like, okay, 5 books, it's enough. I've done enough to these characters.
We
They now get
we
to live happily ever after.
Oh yeah, I know, right? Like somebody said, is Callum me? Like, do I write myself as my character? I was like, no, I don't think I'd survive. I think if I met him in a dark alley, he'd try to strangle me, you know? after all the crap I put him through. But I do know that as we shift into the fourth book is a pivotal turning point. He starts to step into less of a reacting to things that are happening, and we'll see him becoming more proactive and taking more of an leadership role. And we'll see that kind of going forward after starting in the fourth book. We see hints of it before that, but really from there onward.
Interesting. And so how did you, as a female writer, how did you decide to make your character male?
Yeah, my short joking answer is that if my character's traipsing through the woods for weeks on end, I didn't want to worry about menstrual cycles. But that wasn't really that's just my joking answer and stuff. But really the character just sort of developed for the role. I didn't set out to write a male protagonist. It's just that's the character that developed. And sometimes you probably find this when you're writing that you can't always control your characters. They are going to just develop the way they want to develop, and you can fight it all you want, but it's just not going to work. They're going to control it. So
Yes, I've had that
found out that this
happen.
character was a guy and his name was Callum because Callum was on my list of baby names and I really liked it and my husband didn't. And so I really wanted to use that name.
Aw, that's sweet. So he's kind of like your book child.
Yes, my
And now he's
fiction.
growing up and coming into his
I'm
own
going
and
through crap. You know,
going to save
I'm
the world.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Once he stops fighting things, fighting his role, fighting his, destiny basically, then things become a little bit easier for him. I mean, they're still not easy. He still runs into problems and, like his one of the characters that we see that kind of materializes in the third book, who I really like, his name is Jax. And Jax is constantly nagging Callum like you're way too serious for such a young guy and but he keeps telling he'll say a lot of times it's like I don't know what karma got you pissed off but you know we need to rectify this because you're a trouble magnet.
Yeah, so yeah, I can see that he's in the crosshairs of many fates there.
Yes.
So were you a writer before this? Had you ever written before you like had this idea and just sat down one day and started writing?
I've been writing for over 30 years. Ever since I think I was like on the cusp of turning into a teenager. So I was like 12, 11, maybe somewhere around there. And I was very introverted, very shy. I also, was struggling to understand the world around me. And I needed an outlet and I started living vicariously, writing stories in, short stories or scenes or poems. I started with poetry. And then my mom bought me a typewriter. And this is the age before I had a computer. I mean, they existed, but I didn't have one. So I started writing on this typewriter and I was amazed that I could paint pictures with words and I was hooked. And then, I mean, found out later on, I think it was 2019, I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And I was thinking, well, that makes sense why I struggle to understand the world. And, I'm very glad that that was how my brain was wired because I learned to watch and study the world. And I had, it gave me insight into how people, a little bit more insight, maybe I could always use more, into how people are thinking and what motivates them and why they do the things they do because I couldn't understand it. So I studied people. And I think it gives me a lot more insight into my characters and building characters. That was when I had finished my first book in 2019 and I sent it off to an editor thinking, okay, well, I've been writing, I hadn't shared anything before that. Maybe this is my thing. And, the worst they can say is it sucks. And they came back and they said, this doesn't suck. You should publish. So 2 years later, I did.
That's so exciting. That's such a great story. It's so inspiring. It's so cool. I'm just, yeah, that's just amazing. And I am saying like ADHD, like, so, but it seems like you're really focused. Like if you, I mean, you can write a whole novel, right? So,
The thing,
um,
the thing with ADHD is we all have our hyper focuses. So writing and creating is my hyper focus. And if I get into the zone and I'm writing, I will sit down and literally forget that the world exists. I won't get
okay.
up. I won't eat. I will hold my bladder all day. A tornado could rip my house apart, and unless my power goes out or my internet's dropped, I'm still going. I mean, you'd have to pry me away. And so I'll sit down at 8 a.m. and I'll get up at 8 p.m. and I'll be like, wow, I'm
Oh.
really sore, and the sun is gone. Where did it go? So it's kind of like a hobby, passion turned obsession kind of
Or
thing. So
superpower, some people would say.
yes,
I'm gonna
yes.
call it a superpower because it all seems very magical to me. So I'm super excited to dig into your book. Tell everyone where we can find the book.
So the best place to look is my website. I've got links to all my books. I've got my blurb and description and such. It's www.jmshawauthor.com. And my first book has been relaunched. It's got new chapters. It's got a fancy new cover. Doing an edit and like an edit cleanup on my second and third book. I'm not adding new material, but they're going to get fancy covers too.
Oh, that's always super exciting to have new fancy covers. And it's a beautiful cover, by the way. I should have
I know.
printed it out or put it on the screen. I'll put it on the cover of your
I was
episode.
absolutely blown away. Like I found somebody who's really good and they came highly recommended to me after I was struggling to find something. And I thought my covers were good, but then it was now, it was always kind of like, it's not quite right, not quite right. And I still look at my cover, my new cover, and I think, wow, that's a great cover. Oh, wait, that's mine.
That's exciting.
We're currently
That's so
working on
cool.
we're doing it out of sequence because my fourth book is done. And I had changed editors for my fourth book, and they did such a great job that I was like, okay, I want them to go back and edit my first three. And so we did a full re-edit on my first book, and I'm like, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to get covers for all of them. So the fourth book is getting a new cover done as we speak. And I may as well add, because I think when I did the first book, there were characters that didn't get their voice. So I had to, I gave them their voice, I gave them their own chapters. I expanded on some things because there was some insight that came to me as I was doing those. So there's a couple little secret tidbits that come through. And then I just clarified the rest of the stuff and kind of added, a little more depth to the history, the lore, and the stories.
Oh, that's so neat. I can't wait to dive in. Yeah, I think that's a good idea because sometimes, I mean, some authors do things differently. Like I talk to authors that they know they're going to write a 4-book series and they write the whole series before they even release the first one. So if there's
Yeah.
something in the first book that needed tweaking based on the fourth book, you could do that, right? You could make sure everything aligns. But like I don't do that. I do one and then I publish. I do the second one and then I publish. So if
Yeah.
there's a rule I made in the first book that doesn't jive with what I do in the fourth book, I can't fix it. I just have to work around my rule.
Yeah.
So
Oh, and I do very much the same thing. I mean, when I started out, I was not a planner. I was more of a pantser. I knew where to start, where to end, and somewhere in the middle needed to shift it. But as I'm getting deeper into the series and there's more details I got to keep straight, I'm starting to plot out like what is the major theme in this chapter and just saying, okay, this chapter I need to talk about this and this and this. The rest can fill it in.
right.
So I do leave myself that open freedom for creativity, but I do tend to plot a lot more. And it's different. I mean, in a way it's easier because you know what this chapter is going to be about. And as long as you have those, check off those points, you're fine. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, I didn't know. I mean, what if I want to add an extra chapter? Yes, I can still do that. So
That works too. You get the best of both worlds, hopefully.
yeah, you don't miss anything and you still get that freedom. So yeah, I hope so. Seems to be
Well,
working for me.
yeah. Well, JM, thank you so much for being here. Re-release of The Ascension and the Callum Walker series. And you can go to her website or their website, maybe, at jmshawauthor.com to find all those books. And I will definitely have you back next time when you release books 5 and 6.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's fun. I mean, who doesn't want to talk about their passion, right?
I know. I love love talking with authors about their books because even the most introverted author, when you ask them about their character or the books, it's like, we can
Yes,
talk
their eyes light
forever.
up. Yeah.
Yes, it's so fun. Well, thank you again.
Thank you so much. I would love to come
Bye.
back.
Okay, great. It's a date.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Once I get my second one is almost edited, re-edited. My third one is going to go right away, start into the editing. And then, I love your doggy, tail wagging.
He knows the cues of when, yeah, for some
Yes.
reason it's always
I wanted to bring my girl down here, but she's got an upset tummy, so I didn't want to be like halfway through a podcast. You hear in the background, "Woo, woo, woo."
Oh, nope.
Yeah,
I want
so
that.
that's always fun to jump up to. But
Well,
yeah.
yeah.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, Make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.